Well, hello and welcome everybody to Insight to Happiness, weekly webinars with me, Derek Mason. And yeah, let's begin. So where we're going to start this week? We're going to talk about feelings and how they show up for me. And something that I always say, since I've got this three principles understanding, is that I've followed the feeling. And to break it down, three principles understanding is of principles of mind, consciousness, and thought. And there's no feelings in there. It's just mind, consciousness, and thought. But I know I definitely ain't saying I'm following my thinking, because I know that's what probably got me into trouble in the first place, believing and following my thinking. Even if I'm believing and following my thinking in the moment, this understanding is sort of showing me if I follow that feeling, the feeling sort of guides me and draws me in the right direction. And if you take it back to this understanding, like I said, mind, consciousness, and thought, and we know that our feelings are informed by our thinking in the moment 100% of the time. So if I'm having certain thinking and it's producing a certain feeling, then I would follow that. If it's producing a feeling that I don't like, I might still carry on and persevere through that feeling and blame the outside world. But I know those feelings that I had when I was doing my sentence and I had my insights, and it showed me that those feelings that I've been looking everywhere outside of myself for, I could see them anywhere, in any circumstances. And it left me more than open. It left me so open to be able to see something different and be open to the fact that my thinking can change. My thinking that it might have been set solid or rigid for so many years. And that thinking would only ever have been formed. The longer I had that thinking, the younger I would have had to be to have formed it. And probably the longer I've had to form it, the more solid it looked. But to know that thinking could change, to know I could have that thinking and not feel the same way, that's what made me key in a bit on the feelings. And I can follow that feeling. Not the feeling that I've been trying to force through all my life, that I felt fleeting moments of it when I gained the things that I thought produced that feeling. But that feeling when I didn't have to do anything with the thinking that I had. Simplified it for me. It's where I say, I can follow that feeling. I know it's always going to put me in the right space. And it's basically what I've been doing ever since. And it doesn't put me in a familiar space. In out here, I'm in a space that's so unfamiliar to me. But when I talk about inside I'm in a space that's so familiar to me, so feels like home. Those feelings. And I've had this, like 7 years I've been doing this. 7 years I've had to look into how much thinking do I really have that is solid and set in play. Like my whole world is made up of it. As Sid Banks said, I think our world we view it through thought is made up of thought. And we've all got our individual separate reality, how we've constructed it, and what certain constructs make us feel. But I think I said it before, if it's all neutral, then how we've constructed it, how I've constructed mine, is always open to change. And I guess I only notice the bits that really stick out. So the bits that cause me pain, those are the bits I've had to put more thinking on and construct a more tighter shell. But it doesn't have to be that way. And when I get to understand the separate reality of everything I ever thought I knew, it's totally different to the separate reality of somebody who's walked by my side every inch, every minute of my life, experienced everything that I had experienced. That what goes inside, that guide that we follow inside is different for us all. The thinking that we have is different for us all. It comes and it goes. It can mean one thing, then in the next breath it means something else. And like I said, that's what probably got me in trouble. Following that thinking, I would think something, I would feel it, I believe it, I need to act. Or somebody outside of me needs to act. But when I know that thinking can change, if it doesn't feel right, and that's what our feelings are. That's why I say, when I say I can follow that feeling, if I follow that feeling as an indicator, nothing more than an indicator as to what direction my thinking's pointing me at. And those bits where it sticks out, those bits where we feel pain, those bits where we feel anger, those bits where we feel jealousy, rage, insecurity, all of the thinking, what feeds those, we can take a look at it. If we are using our feelings as a guide, as an indicator to where our thinking's pointing, if we're present enough, we can take a look at that thinking and see it exactly for what it is. Just thinking. And it's a thinking that's experienced in the moment. But it's got a date on it that was probably timestamped many years ago. Many years ago. And it's how I sort of see how I crack through that sort of old set thinking. What enables that fresh thought to come in. You know, that fresh thought. And it's fresh by nature, like I've never thought it before. It wasn't a possibility before. And that's got its own feeling. That's the feeling that I can follow. Get a glimpse of those fresh thoughts in the moment. Understanding how they feed me and furnish me and give me a feeling of home. Give me a feeling of where I should be. And there's no knowing in that. There's no end goal. There's no pretty rosy picture of this is where I'm going to be. It's just having an acceptance and a bravery to follow that and see it through and see where that takes you. And see the kind of journey that you can go on. And I started this, like I said, I started this a few years ago. And since then, I've seen some things that have previously I would have thought impossible. I found myself in spaces that previously I would have thought impossible. And maybe old thinking, that personal thinking, that can sometimes seep deep into us to where we think it's our being. We think that's our fiber. We think that's what makes us up. But when you get a glimpse of something different, when you get a feel of something different, you get a feel for that home, that sense of knowing without knowing. And those will always come on for me. I think it's about just having the bravery to see through it every time and just enjoy the journey. Enjoy the ups while they last and try to see through the downs. Because that's how it is. Life is just a roller coaster. This understanding doesn't promise you a smooth ride. It is a roller coaster. But when we see those feelings that I'm talking about and we know how to follow them, we open ourselves up to way more opportunities. Opportunities that, like I said previously, never felt before, never experienced. And when we're always constantly looking outside of ourselves for that thing that I'm talking about, that feeling. People who look like they've got that feeling. People who look like they're living their best life. And from when I was little, I was talking last time about how I was always looking outside of myself for that happiness. And if I tell you, most of the time when I was looking outside for the happiness, the people who I was seeing were happy weren't laughing and joking. They were doing things that I thought I needed to be doing to make me happy. But those people had stories going on for them as well. So I'm using my insecurity to look at somebody else play out their insecurity and think there's something over there for me. And not really understand that what is for me is for me. And who I can be in this separate reality, I can only ever be me. I can only ever follow my feelings. Stop following the thinking. Follow the feeling. When we buy into it and believe it, we 100% feel it's real. Just like when that amazing, beautiful, fresh thought comes through. How we can feel good, feel amazing. Feel that we're in the right place. And that's always available to us in the moment, if we're open to that. We can be fueled by that feeling. That feeling will take us anywhere we need to be. The thinking that we have of why we're there or what we're going to do once we get there, we furnish ourselves with the feeling. Like I said, our thoughts can change. Where we thought we found our fun can change. And again, it's having that bravery to look through that thinking. I remember I've seen this before, that like, how could I be in prison and not see anything more solid than what I'd already seen before. Because what I say I saw in prison was I got a glimpse of a feeling that pointed me in a direction. That's like saying I heard it from my sister's aunt's cousin's friend. It's so far removed. But that's all it took compared to everything I'd ever learned and everything I'd ever known. It was enough to buy through that image, buy through that year, by pass through those years of thinking that I'd built up about who I was. And it allowed me freedom when I was in there. It allowed me some level of freedom once I got out. And it's continued to allow me a level of freedom, even in times of uncertainty. And freedom might not look like my ideal version of freedom, but it allowed me enough space, enough wiggle room to see that I was going to be okay and see that stuff will work out. Because you know what? Stuff always works itself out. I've seen that. If you stay with what you know, and it's pretty little, but what you know is that you're good enough, and what you know is that the feeling is pointing you in this direction, so I'm supposed to be here. The feeling informs me. And it always shows up in spaces, unsuspected places. Again, shattering what I thought I knew about where I have to be or where I would love to be. Where my security comes from. How I built up this insecure image of myself that is only too ready to surface the moment my intellect has a look at it and starts to tell me what it does know. But I've got to have faith in what I don't know. And that's the next moment. We never know the next moment. If I have faith in myself, then I'm able to have faith in the unknown. Because that's the only known that's the only known part. When I feel what I feel, I know that I'm relevant. Of maybe a lifetime of telling myself there was no relevancy there. And it doesn't come in a form. It comes in a feeling, that connection with our deeper conscious, our deeper wisdom. And we have this thing in this understanding where we talk about the feeling. When we talk about the feeling, we know what we're talking about. I just have an understanding of what somebody else is talking about because I felt the feeling. And we can have those feelings that are fueled by our personal thinking. Those feelings are, I can understand someone's feeling, but those are just like the separate nature, the separate reality. Those feelings are individual, made up of personal thought as to why they're being aggrieved and why what's happening to them shouldn't be happening to them. And if we take it there, that was a big one for me growing up. I was a good child. I was a good boy. Why is everyone victimizing me? And that just fueled my story that I was the most greatest person, amazing person, and everybody else who didn't see that They were out to cause me pain and harm. But just like me, they've got their own separate reality. And a lot of the time they weren't setting out what they were planning on doing to cause me pain and harm. They were setting out to do because that made sense to them. And I can't navigate that road. I can only navigate my own. I can see through my own reality and how I've constructed it through thought and experience on how everything, absolutely everything, what it means to me, how relevant it is. And I can understand somebody else's. I can understand why somebody thinks it's important to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and tidy the house up from top to bottom, and will not let the postman put a letter through the letterbox and the house is a mess. That makes sense to somebody. I can understand it, but that's not my reality. But I can understand how that must make that person feel. And how that personal thinking has constructed their feeling. And we all do it. We've all got it. And when I was little, I used to think mine was right. Mine was absolute right. Because mine was based on common sense. Yeah, I've got common sense. How about that? And if we were to take a poll, most people in the world would agree with my common sense because it's universal. But guess what? It's separate. It's separate as it is separate. As individual as I have my thoughts, it's as individual as everybody else has their thoughts. Like I say, we're all operating from the same system. All of us operating from the same system. But we've got our own reality, our own interpretations that can sometimes look like they mix and mingle and intertwine. But you always be an individual with your separate reality on something. And all we can ever do is get an understanding. And when I saw through that, I could see somebody else voice a total opposite opinion to me. Something that appears obvious to me just doesn't appear to be obvious to them. They've got the opposite. They seem to be seeing something totally different. And like I said, 100% before, used to think they can see the reality that I can see. They're only saying that to wind me up. They're only saying that because they want to upset me. Not knowing that the passion that I'm voicing my opinion with, the same passion they're voicing theirs with, from their reality. That takes a bit of the personal off of me. I can understand. I can also connect by seeing that it's the same system we're using. And when we tune into those feelings that I'm talking about, we can foster connection. We don't foster agreement. I said, this understanding again doesn't make everybody agree with everybody. But it does enable us to see that we are all the same. We're all the same, but yet we're so individual. And where has this feeling led me to from where I started this journey? And I always say that, but I started this journey well before I went to prison. I started this journey from when I was little and growing up, and I was forging the image of who I thought I was. Because that's what I forged who I thought I was when I was a child. I remember I thought I knew everything. I knew best. And I watch my little son now going on like he knows everything. And I think, what's he? But I remember when I was like that. And we forge who we are. We forge what we have to accept, what we don't have to accept. So since I've got this understanding and I've come out and I've started to not do anything that's familiar to me, and by truly saying following the feeling, it's it's a journey that, like I said, I can only measure it from where I am now and just look back at the difference, the physical difference, the visual difference of what's around me, the people I interact with, people I call colleagues, my environment has generally changed. But the feeling has stayed the same. The feeling has stayed the same. When I've had jobs, haven't had jobs, been homeless, not been homeless, the feeling that I can follow remains the same. And that feeling of light, a feeling of being able. How do you follow that? How can I say I followed that? And the only thing I can say is by not buying into all the old thinking that I used to buy into, that I thought used to give me that. Look for something new. That new thought, fresh thought, maybe impossible thought. And you know what? Those maybe impossible ones are the better ones. Because I'm right now where impossible where I thought I could be. But I didn't have that thought when I had my insight. That was not on the table, it was not on the cards. It was more to do with, I remember when I first started this, I learned it with two other lads, and they both had stories, like major stories to tell. And I thought I didn't have no story in comparison. Not half a story. But what I did know is I had a lot of thinking, and most of it about myself. And when I'm in that feeling and in that moment, that thinking what I got about myself, I can see through it. And every time I see through it, I get a little bit stronger and a little bit bolder and can maybe see a little bit more. No, it's a journey. It's an up and down journey, like I said. Thinking we have about it and where we think we should be and where we think we shouldn't be. That's where we find our source of clarity. When we take everything off the table and just show up from that space, from that feeling. And like I said before, I think to feel it is to know it. The intellect can see it, but it can never know it. the intellect can only cover certain aspects of that feeling we're talking about. That feeling of us. Yeah, so where I am now, like I said, I'm just in that beautiful space, following the feeling, not knowing what's around the corner, but that's okay. Because I know I'm facing in the right direction. And sometimes that's all we need to know. As long as we're just facing in the right direction. Even when we're on the lower part of the roller coaster, we just know we're facing in the right direction. And each moment take care of itself. If I have that trust in myself, is there any questions in the chat, Emma? Any time to see any questions?
No questions. Although I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know when you're in the low part of the roller coasters that you are looking in the right direction? Like, how do you know?
Thank you for that, Emma. For me, when I'm on that low part of the roller coaster, I've always got something to do that's maybe going to shorten my length down there. Or I've got some thinking to do on how I can get out of it. That's for not facing in the right direction. More to understand that while I'm here, I'm just here. And the least I can act from here, the quicker I'm able to see something. And sometimes those are just words. When you're on that low part of the roller coaster, what I just said are just words in your head. And you can recite them over and over and over to yourself. Yeah, I know I'm going to see something. This is just for, but you're not feeling like what you're thinking. Because you're not just going to have a thought, oh yeah, I know this is all thought, and it disappears. That's where you have to have that bit of faith to know that thought can change. Because we can only inhabit one set of thinking at a time. So if I'm on the low on a roller coaster, I'm going to intellectually think, okay, I know that I'm only here for a while. Let me have a thought that's going to take me out of it instantaneously. I don't think intellect covers that. We can intellectually know we're there. Intellect has to step aside. And the intellect's the one that's telling you, maybe you should check the wheel. Maybe you should boost the engine. Maybe you should kick the other person out because you're carrying too much weight. Maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do that. And it's like that analogy I've got when you're in the quicksand. The more you're struggling, the more you're coming up with these ideas of how to get out of the quicksand, the deeper you're getting into it. If you're in quicksand and someone tells you face the right way, what do you mean? Just stop moving. That goes against all your intellect. But that's what we have to do. That's how you face the right direction. Sometimes that's just a standstill. And not everything, sometimes it's just a standstill. Sometimes it's just a do whatever to just know whatever you use. I've got my list of usual go-tos. my usual list. And the success rate on them is probably 0. But my intellect still tells me that's all we've got. Maybe we've got something more than that. Maybe we've got one of them under the counter jobs. You know, when you go under the counter? Yeah, maybe we've got one of them. I'm relying on that and knowing that as well. And you only see it after you've seen it. So maybe you're not there anymore. And you can look back and you see all the little signs that you were about to take. And you notice what really did get you out was just a standstill. So maybe next time you're down there, you've got a little bit more faith in believing doing it again. And each situation is different. They never look the same. No, this one's different from the last one. No, you was lucky because you stood still the last time. Just having that faith in yourself. That one, you don't belong there. And 2, if you are there, you're not going to be there for long. And those things help you face in that right direction. And like I said, it's an emboldening thing every single time. So there's always a way out, different than the way you thought it was. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think, did Alfie have a question? She had a question as well.
Yeah, well, it's just an observation that something that I've been like getting clearer, like I suppose you kind of see something and you think, oh, it's that again. Like, but it's somehow seeing it deeper. And it's like, as you're talking, I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is kind of what I've been sort of sitting with a bit, which is exactly that. It's like there's thought, big thought and little thought, or big thinking and little thinking, and there's big feeling and little feeling as well, isn't there? And it's like the feeling is like that kind of when you feel that kind of thread to your own sort of source connection or your own wisdom or your own alignment or something. It seems like a thread to me. But you can have this kind of frenetic feeling that can also go on that feels like, whoa, that's really good, or that's really bad. And it's like so easy to get tricked by the kind of adrenalized good feeling as being a good feeling and a direction, isn't it? When actually that's no more reliable than being in the sort of shitty, adrenalized, kind of negative, low feeling. And it's almost like both those states of excitement, or I don't know, whatever the opposite of excitement would be, kind of is the body trying to correct itself back to that middle feeling, isn't it? But we get distracted thinking it's giving us a different message, like when really it's just a sign, like you need to stop in the middle of the tornado or something and like let everything settle, because otherwise it's just going to keep you tricked, like in this kind of swirl, and I was just like hearing that again somehow as you were talking, like, oh yeah, it's so easy to forget that there's like feeling and there's feelings which are just like completely unreliable. And especially the excitement, in a way, I think is a real trickster, isn't it? Because it actually feels so enticing and good. And then the other thing I heard, like, just like, oh, when you were talking, I thought, oh, we have a situation, don't we, that we're in, like, that looks solid, like this is my life, or this is my problem, or this is my whatever. And it was like I just realized that it's so hard, isn't it, to put things into words, but it's almost like I was on some level understanding that that's happening because of thinking, but I was seeing it like a solid block, like well, that's a solid block of thinking, so that doesn't change. And it's like, oh, I suddenly saw like, oh yeah, this situation I'm in that looks solid, or that's been solid, or that's been there for years, is still only ever held together by each little individual thought in each second, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, and if that tiny thought in that second can just be different, it's like sawdust, isn't it? It's not a block of wood anymore. I mean, I'm not like have that experience like you have of something completely falling away like that, but unless that's just what's happening. But but you know, that's just like, oh yeah, it's it's all tiny particles. Everything is just tiny particles that can change, isn't it? Nothing's like a big solid thing. And yeah, I don't know any of
Yeah,
that makes sense, but
Absolutely loved that. Loved
oh,
it.
good.
Yeah, I'm just, oh God, I love it every time you talk, Alfie, but that's just blown me away. It's amazing.
Oh, good. Sometimes it's like, because it's like you can feel what you're trying to say, can't you? But putting it into words, and also when you were talking about like being in prison, and I don't know, there was something, and I thought, oh yeah, it's like so often we just want to keep standing on the solid bank of the river, don't we? Like, because it feels solid, like, but actually if we just like leapt into the canoe, we would start flowing. But it feels like, oh, you know, it feels like sometimes wouldn't it just be easier to stay in this solid place going nowhere, because at least it's familiar, whereas like new, you know, me and Erica were talking about kind of having suddenly being in new situations or new circumstances that we haven't been in before. And it's like, I can almost feel my brain is looking around for old thought to cling on to help me make sense. Like, give me, you know, let me get back to the bank of the river, because at least like I understand that somehow. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And that's everything. I loved everything you said, Alfie. And that's like the fact of us scrambling back to that river is sort of us resigning to that being our fiber, that being where we have to be, that being where we always should be. And why did we ever try to jump in the river in the first place? And yeah, when we come out soggy and all damp and feeling down, yeah, just know that that is not the case. That is not the case. And I love the way you articulated it as well, that what everything around us, like you said, is just all built up on our own personal idea, our own personal thoughts on how certain things, and we just have to see through one bit of it, just to examine it and see through one thing. And when something fundamental, you see something fundamental break down in front of you, then you've got the ability to start looking around you and seeing everything else we've constructed, and see it just as that. And maybe open ourselves up to experiencing it differently. Just maybe. And again, like you said, that opening ourselves up, when we open ourselves up to that feeling and knowing that there's a difference between the intellectual version, what we've built up, and it can come with highs and it can come with lows, but we try to work on the highs and stay out of the lows. But like you said, in the middle, there's this feeling with a fresh thought that just comes, hits us straight through to us. But for me, it cut through all of that, cut through all of whatever I thought was a high, cut through whatever I thought was a low, and just let me know there was a space in the middle that was more beautiful than any space either side of it. Anything could ever be achieved. And I say either side of it because I used to find a bit of comfort in those lows. I used to find a bit of security. And if you offer me a good offer or a bad offer, I'll say, yeah, I'm going to get the bad offer anyway, so I might as well just go over there. And it's both sides. But to know the middle, that neutral, that is that feeling that I follow. And we can go off the path a bit, but as long as I know I'm firmly in that feeling of that neutral, I'm open to going absolutely anywhere and being absolutely anywhere. And it ties in with the thinking of who we think we are. We're prepared to jump out onto that, off of that riverbank, or leave that security rock, what we only know as home. Then the adventure begins. And we can stop looking for all of the olds and start finding beauty in the news. And that's why I said, you understood everything I said. That's like I was saying with the news, the impossibility, the impossible ones are the beautiful ones. The ones what you never saw coming, never thought could happen. And it could be anything. We're not talking about life-changing events there. We're talking about anything. When you see something what you believe to be solid, then you have a change of mind. And if you've got the ability to have a change of mind, then you've got the ability to do what I'm talking about, experience what I'm talking about. Because this is what built up everything we believe in. Is there any other questions, Emma? Do you think? Is there anything, or should I carry on? Yeah, so then, yeah, these spaces, like I said, I was meant to say this, come on, calm down. I was meant to say this at the beginning, that these spaces here are just like a little bit of an exploration for me on, yeah, just seeing what's showing up for me in the moment and how I'm seeing it and how I'm sort of seeing my journey in the moment, not really looking that far ahead. And following that feeling I'm talking about, because that is available all the time. A feeling of neutrality. Yeah, a feeling of clarity. Or you can experience maybe calm. And even that, as I say, where I am right now, even this week, I've had a busy week, but I still managed to find that moment of calm before this meeting, just to settle and know that I am exactly where I'm meant to be. And then I can get a glimpse of that feeling again. And shatter a little bit of that insecure thinking that I inhabit. I know that I would always be okay. I'm not looking in those spaces what I used to look in. Because I know they don't serve me. Oh man, this understanding, it's like, I can't explain where this feeling comes from. I can't explain where this thinking comes from. I can't explain what I'm going to say next. I thought, I tried to not intellectualize, I tried to think my way into thinking I need to fill an hour. And every time I thought something, it would just crumble away. And I realized again, it's just showing up and just being myself and not thinking that it's any big spectacular show. It's just me being ordinary, showing up, sharing from what I've seen. about myself. And I've had to get an acceptance of myself. And know that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, doing what I love, producing that feeling. And like I said, I don't know where I'm going to be or what I'm going to be doing, but I know it's going to have this feeling at the heart of it. And that could be working in Tesco's. That could be working at a hospital. That could be doing absolutely anything. What I do physically does not furnish the feeling. It's following that feeling, whatever that looks like for anybody, is what furnishes it. Is there any more questions or comments?
I was just thinking about Emma's question. I can't remember what it was now, but when you're in the low bits, how do you know that you're looking in the right direction? And for me, like this last couple of days, I've been like something happened yesterday that really annoyed me and it was really driving me mad. It was on my mind all afternoon, and I couldn't find the feeling and I couldn't find the direction, but it was kind of enough to know from the feeling that was in my body that that was the wrong direction. So like all the things that I was like, I had like lots of sort of visceral feelings going on and like, oh, I want to do that. And I'm going to do that. And but each time catching myself and going, no, I know because of the feeling that's going on in my body, that's not the right direction. So even though I couldn't see I couldn't find my way back, just by sort of leaving it alone, today is feeling better.
And I love that, Erica, because that's the brave bit, because we're shown everything in one direction, but nothing in the other direction. So you know that you don't have to do that, but you're not being shown how. You're just being shown the way to relieve a bit of thing, the way to, this must be the way. This is how I've done it before, so let me do it. But I can't see that other way. It's not available. Only when we settle and we're ready to see it, will we then see it, and then it will open up and it will take it. And then it will look so obvious. It looked like it was there all the time. But just knowing that.
It's the faith, isn't it? It's having the faith. It's like knowing that, you don't know when, but at some point it's going to clear.
And that's the beautiful thing about this whole understanding, because we never know when. We never know. But if we know we're facing in that right direction, we're not facing in the wrong direction. If we know we're not facing in that direction, we've got a better chance of seeing that opportunity when it comes. Yeah, like again, I said, something for this understanding. For me, that is something that previously I would have thought was impossible. Only options were the ones that I knew, and there was this magic option where you could just come out unscathed or take a totally different direction. To actually see that and then start to see it for myself, because that's something you don't want to hear that from anybody. You have to live that and feel that yourself. And when you feel it yourself, then it becomes possible. And then again, how brave we are to spread it and see how far that goes.
I just saw as well there when Erica was talking how, in a way, the irony is not the feeling bad. That's not the thing that's telling us. It's the fact we want it to be different that's telling us we're looking in the wrong direction, isn't it? It's the fact we want to grab onto the good thing or push away the bad thing. So it's not even the feeling of good or bad that's the thing to get away from, the warning sign, is it? It's the desire for it to be different or to be grabbed onto. And yeah, that's something that's sort of I can kind of forget.
And that's the key, I think. If you know that it's okay, that's when we say it's okay. So if it's not okay, then we have to fight to get out of there. But if it's okay and you resign to it being okay, then there ain't that space what you're talking about where we get the rub or start looking for these options. And I think that's like for everybody, understanding that in their own situation is a thing to do and to see and to be brave and look at it for themselves. But that's exactly it. Anyway, we've hit the hour mark. So again, thank you guys for turning up. Wonderful space. Yeah, hope I see you guys next week and look forward to it myself. Bye guys.
Thank you.
Bye, mate.
Bye. Bye guys.